It's like, don't tell me I have a purpose. I know that. I've always known I've had a purpose. Help me figure out what that purpose is so that I can walk in it. And so for students, very similar to your son, maybe it's not necessary that we know what our purpose is right now, right? Maybe what's important right now is for us to know what our purpose is today.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast. I'm your host, James McLamb. I'm here with Chase Livingston. How are you doing today, Chase?
Man, James, I'm doing incredible. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very grateful. I've been very fortunate this season to have some excellent guests that our mutual friend, the talented and amazing Brittany Richmond, has introduced me to. So again, I'd love to shout out to her. She's really connected, and I was so pleased that we were able to meet and felt a lot of synergy when we first talked.
Yeah, we were talking just a little bit before we started recording, and man, it just sounds like you are just running and gunning, man, talking to all the people and doing all the things. You actually introduced me to a few people, Chip being one of them. And so I went and added Chip and gave him a shout out and mentioned you. And he said, okay, cool. When you coming on my show? So we're going to do one New Year's Eve, which is going to be really fun.
Chip Baker is an amazing person as well, and will be was a past participant of Igniting the Ignite Summit, and I think he'll be back with us again for a future one as well. That's awesome. Our audience would love to learn a little bit more about you, hear your story. So if you wouldn't mind, take a couple of minutes, tell them who you are, and let our audience just see a little bit more into you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chase Livingston. I've kind of coined myself as your trainer for life. And the reason I call myself that is because my background is health and fitness. So I'm a personal trainer, and basically what I do, or what I have done for the past half a decade full time, is help people grow into the strongest versions of themselves, right? And so basically what has happened is through this time of strengthening people, I started to realize something. I started to discover that the exact same principles that help you get strong in the gym will help you get strong in every area of your life. Now, the funny thing that kind of connects me to youth is, of course, in 2020, my wife and I, we had our first child. And of course, that opens you up to a whole world. You become exposed to all of these different things. You start thinking about things you've never thought of before, like, he's a baby, right? And I'm like, where am I going to take him to school? Like, what is he going to be interested in? I start thinking about all of these different things. And as I start looking at this stuff, like I said, you become exposed to all of this different stuff. And, before we'll get into the meat of this later, but I started seeing that there are some kids in our youth. I say some, there's many thousands, millions of students, of kids, of youth who are struggling in many areas of their lives. And my personal belief and conviction is that Generation Z and Generation A are going to be the ones who change the world. I mean, I really do believe that. I mean, you can taste it in the air that we are on the brink of some incredible change. And I believe these generations coming up are going to do that. So of course, with my son being involved in that, like, I was like, hey, I feel like I got to do my part. Like, it was just this tug on my heart. And so the connecting piece to all of it is I felt this tug in my heart to encounter the youth. But my knowledge base comes from one, theater. That's like what my degree's in, theater, communication, film. And so you blend that with fitness, and now you've got this guy on stage who's talking about, the benefits of working out and how it's going to make you better in school and better in class and better in your life endeavors. And so that's a little bit about me. That's like where I come up with this term, your trainer for life. Because the truth is I don't just want to be your personal trainer, right? I want to be your trainer for life. I don't just want to be your fitness coach. I want to be your life coach. I want to be your spiritual mentor. I want you to live your best life for the rest of your life. So that's a little bit about me and kind of what I do and who I am.
I also want to point out to those who are listening and not watching that the shirt that he has on has Chase Greatness on it, which I just saw that when you leaned back one time, and I started smiling because I thought that's great brand marketing right there. That's usually what you got. I love that. That was cool.
And I actually thought about this before we even got on the show. I got kicked out of my office because we're about to have our second child. We've got a girl on the way. She'll be here 3 days before Christmas if things go according to plan. So, yeah, man.
Great Christmas present for the parents. She's going to hate it as she gets older.
Yes, absolutely.
You'll be doing that stuff that a lot of parents do. We're going to celebrate a half birthday. That's what you're going to end up doing, just so that she has something 6 months later to do. So.
Hey, we are already in discussion about like how we're going to handle that. If she could come like a week early or a week or two late, like to me, that's fine. My wife's like, she should come now. Like, I'm done with this. Like, she's ready. But, anyways, so what's happened? I've been kicked out of my office. And so I've gone in there and I've been cleaning stuff out. And I found this old shirt from 2019. It was a t shirt that I got made for a boot camp that I did. Now, what I called this boot camp was Chase Blast Boot Camp. So you see, Chase Greatness is what I'm rocking today. But back in the day, I was known as Chase Blast. Okay, that was like, and so I saw that shirt and I just kind of started laughing. And it goes back to this whole idea, this concept of reinvent yourself as many times as you need to, as you kind of develop yourself. And I know you've kind of done this with yourself as far as like, you know, your branding and your marketing as far as like Generation Youth and like where y'all are headed and what y'all are doing. And so, you know, we get afraid to revolutionize ourselves or become something different. But really what we're doing is we're building upon what we've created initially. So like deep in my core, I'm still Chase Blast. But now it's Chase Greatness because I'm getting on stage and I'm saying, when I say Chase, you say greatness. Chase.
That's so cool. That's an exciting thing to get them to interact like that. And yes. I love that. And when I went to your site, which is on the screen, and we'll talk about it at the end as well for those who want to find it easily, there was the section that you had on youth. You put down that your mission working with youth was empowering students to become the best versions of themselves. And that means different things to different people. But to me, it excites me when I hear folks that want to help them thrive. But the question I have is, what's keeping them from doing that? What is the big obstacle that you see that you want to help them overcome? Because, you know, if we want to help them become their best version, then we obviously see there's a hindrance to them accomplishing it on their own. So what do you see as that?
You know, it's a great question. And I think it's actually fitting that you've got me here on Halloween. You know, today's Halloween. And of course, you know, we're talking about ghosts and ghouls and goblins and monsters and all this scary stuff. But to me, the scariest thing in the world is getting to the end of your life and wondering what if, or getting to the end of your life and thinking, I could have done more. And, you know, it goes back to what I talked about earlier. You know, we had our son and I started to see all of these different things. And man, there are some, we talk about Halloween, man, there are some scary statistics out there as far as our youth. You know, 18% of teens today are experiencing major depressive episodes over the last year. That's like 3.2 million kids. That's scary. You know, 3 out of every 10 teens experience abuse of some kind, you know, whether that's in their family, it's online, it's in relationships, abuse is happening. And that's scary. You know, we look at 20% of high school students who seriously considered committing suicide. Like, this is scary stuff. And it's clear that there is,
and that number is even higher for girls. So if you break it down gender-wise, it's upwards in the low 30s for girls. So guys are, you know, in the teens.
That's not something you tell somebody who's got a daughter on the way. But no,
I have 2 daughters, so there you go. So.
Well, and you can even speak into this more than I can. It's like, you know, we as, you know, adults, as those who go before the kids, like, we've got to be their voice. You know, we've got to be the ones who are speaking into this. But clearly, there are some things that have been set up against our kids. And it's like I told you guys just earlier. It's like, no, I believe these generations coming up, they're the ones who are going to make the change. And that's why we're seeing so much resistance against them, whether it's mental health, it's depression, it's anxiety, it's economy. I mean, we could come up with all kinds of stuff saying that these things are against the students, the kids, the youth, and their future. And so that's the hindrance. That's the thing that's holding them back. And so my goal is to help them learn to navigate these things. Because, you know, I got placed in a unique situation where a 2-time college dropout, had completely given up on college and all that different kind of stuff. And my grandmother, I actually spent a period of my life where I worked underneath her and I worked in her yard. Basically, I was like raking leaves and, you know, working in her garden and doing all kinds of stuff. And I just wrapped up my book, The Garden of Greatness, which is all about that time in my life.
Oh, wow.
And so whenever I get the official copy in, this is like my advanced reader's copy. When I get the official one in, I'm going to send you one, James. But what happened is she really influenced me. She said, Chase, you should consider going back to college. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go back. Now, when I go back, I'm 25, I'm 26, I'm 5, 6, 7 years older than a lot of the students who were in there now. And it's from that distance that had been created, that I kind of saw some things that I didn't initially see when I went to college the first couple of times. I started to see where they would slide into these different mindsets, this this self-deprecating type behavior, and it's funny and it's a joke, but I mean, our minds work where we don't know the difference between when we're joking and when we're serious. And, I started to see where they're sliding into substance abuse, they're sliding into mental health problems and stuff like that. And that was another one of those things that in hindsight, now that I've gotten out of that, it's like, that was such a blessing for me to go through that at that point in time, because I was removed from the situation a little bit, So yeah, it's just one of those things where you see these different things happening in these students' lives, and like deep down that like they're the ones who are called to make this change. And that's what draws me to it. Like, that's what makes me say, like, I'm reminded of the quote, and I want to say it was JFK, but I can't remember who exactly said it. But it's like, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? I love that quote. And I even share it with kids whenever I speak sometimes. It's like, if you're not going to do it, then who's going to? Like, we can't keep wondering or hoping somebody else is going to step up. I saw another quote that said something along the lines of, something like, if there's a problem that you're seeing in the world and it's agitating you, maybe you're the answer to that problem. And it's like, man, that convicts you a little bit. It makes you say, okay, well, maybe I need to be doing something a little bit different with my life. Instead of doom scrolling on TikTok and getting mad with everybody else, maybe I should be stepping into these arenas and trying to be the change that we want to see in the world.
There's so many obstacles that they are facing, and I'm glad that you're kind of following that. If not me, then who's going to step in and help them? So how can we help them navigate this? I mean,
Yes.
we understand that, and as a parent of two that are in their early 20s, and then one that's in her mid-teens and stuff, I see this firsthand. It's not just something I work with. I see this firsthand. And when you talked about two-time college dropout, and it took you to your 25 to kind of find yourself and reaffirm yourself, it gives me hope, because my middle child, who's 21, is struggling on school. I don't like this anymore. This is not for me. I don't know what I want to do. I'm kind of lost and stuff. So, I believe that he's going to find his purpose in life. I have this optimistic hope, and I always have felt highly of what his goals are. But his story that he's telling himself is not the same story that I would love to see for him. So how can we help them? How can we help them navigate this? There are parents that are dying for help, and they want to know, how can we help them?
Yeah, James, well, to speak into the situation with your son, people like him are the ones that we need to keep our eyes on, and not in a negative way, in a positive way, because those are the ones who they bounce back in an incredible way, especially when they've got a father figure like you who's doing what you're doing, and you talk the way you talk and you walk the way you walk. Like, he's got a great role model. And honestly, that's another hindrance that our youth faces, is there's a lack of a role model. There's a lack of a male figure who can show them, hey, this is how we do things. This is the way we're supposed to walk. This is the thing that we're supposed to do. But I will tell you that the hindrance that he's facing right now, very similar to mine. He's there, and I could be wrong. I could be speaking out of place, but there's a little bit of friction right now between what the world is saying. Hey, this is what we do, right? We go to college, we get a job. This is how it looks. And there's also this deep internal struggle with him that says, I really feel like it's a different way. And so right now, as he's having to understand, like, hey, maybe I got to play the game a little bit, but also I've got to learn to navigate how I'm going to follow this calling that's deep down inside of him. And sometimes that takes time. Like, for me, it took me a long time. And the other thing that I struggled with was thinking that I had forever, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, the clock is ticking, but at the same time, let's be patient with ourselves. Let's give ourselves time to discover who we are and what our path is and where we're supposed to be going, rather than feeling this constant pressure. And so, if we're going to try to figure out, what the answers are, how we can help these kids, like how the parents can kind of help navigate that, I'm going to go ahead and flat out say, I'm not necessarily the expert. Okay, I don't have all of the answers. And just like you guys, I'm a father of a young kid. I'm trying to figure it out myself. And what I will say, I think really what it comes down to is giving them the great values that they need and making those values their foundation. Hey, these values of, whether it be hard work and perseverance, whether it be believing in themselves and what's actually possible for their lives. Maybe it's committing to the things that they say they're going to do, discovering what those values are. Maybe for some, family's a big value. Hey, time with my mom and dad sitting at the dinner table, that's a very important thing for me. And for some students, hey, maybe it's like, I got to find this fitness outlet. Hey, maybe it's playing football or it's playing basketball. Maybe it's playing sports or in the weight room. They've got to find out what these values are and then how that ties into the type of person who they're becoming. A big thing that we throw at our kids today is, you've got a purpose on your life. We say that like all the time. It's become this like cliche statement, you've got a purpose. There's a plan and a purpose for your life. And it's like kids hear that so much. It's become such a cliche that like when they hear it, it's like that commercial you've heard a million times. They're just like, they're toned out. Like they're like, okay, got it, but the truth is like, yes, they do have it. However, it's like saying that is almost like we're saying something to kind of like slap a Band-Aid on something. It's like, don't tell me I have a purpose. I know that. I've always known I've had a purpose. Help me figure out what that purpose is so that I can walk in it. And so for students, very similar to your son, maybe it's not necessary that we know what our purpose is right now, right? Maybe what's important right now is for us to know what our purpose is today. And so if you've got a job, I think back to a time when I worked at Starbucks and Starbucks taught me a lot. During the time that I was working at Starbucks, I learned a lot because I was like, I'm 23, 24, and I'm thinking, man, I'm late in life. People are getting degrees and I'm getting handed eviction notices from my apartment complex. I'm like trying to figure out myself. And I had to just bring everything back in, like quit chasing the fame and the trends and trying to figure out like what's going to make me liked the most or what people's going to like, how I'm going to look cool and all of these different things. And instead focus on what am I called to do today? When this person comes through the drive-through, how can I make them feel like they're the only person there? How can I make sure that I give them the absolute best experience that I possibly can? Not because I need to make my boss proud at Starbucks, but because that's my purpose. That's what I'm here to do with my 10 toes down. I'm present in the moment. That's what I'm supposed to do. And when we focus on those moments, that's when we actually start to grow into the best version of ourselves.
I so much agree with what you're saying on there and that. But when you said that, so the first thought that came to my mind is the same thing you said about, how they turn not a blind eye, but maybe, get sick of people saying their purpose. As a parent, they're like, oh, I want them to do this, but they're not buying into this.
Yes.
There's so much being thrown at them. And on a side note, I will say this. My son, who is not deciding whether he wants to stay in school, is an exercise science major.
Oh, love it.
And this is even more strikingly similar. I have encouraged him to go and live with his grandfather the rest of the year. Since he's not going to do school, the rest of the year to work with him, because I was thinking he needs some input from my dad to do this. And so when you were telling your story and your similarities, I was like, I'm glad that I'll give the rough footage of this interview to my wife so that she gets encouragement of it. So no one else out there is being encouraged. I want you to know that the McLamb family is being encouraged now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, I hope everybody is. And what I will say is when I send this to you, I'm going to send 2 copies so you can give one to your son, especially
if I can get him to read.
Yeah, while he's with his grandfather, he's going to be resonating with this. He's going to be saying, "Oh my gosh, maybe I see myself in this a little bit." I had
we own my family owns a nursery, so he'll be actually growing. So there's a lot more.
That is perfect.
That was a lot more of what's going on as well. So that's kind of cool.
He's really going to resonate with that.
But how do we get them to realize or even buy into the concept of let me have purpose in what I'm doing now?
Yeah,
because that's just so difficult, especially when they get to those late teens, early into that college age. Either they're living someone else's purpose, which we see a lot, or they're what Mr. Ziegler used to call when he was alive a wandering generality. They're just kind of wandering through life with nothing. They're not a meaningful specific. They are a wandering generality. And we want to be a meaningful specific. And for someone like myself and my oldest daughter that, I don't know, caught a vision very early on because somebody poured into us and we were like, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
We were driven to do the things that we did early in life. He is like never caught that vision to, I want to be like that. So,
yeah. And once again, I'll say I'm not the expert in this. And I think in every situation, there calls for some individual, type of approach. But I will say there's 2 things that will always work. And that's having a conversation and speaking in love and truth, just
Mhm.
talking and coming at this without an agenda, like I think I did this thing not too long ago, and this was for adults. It was for student council advisors. So it was adults. And I went and I spoke on stress and stuff like that. And what I realized at the end of it, so we had this round table discussion. So I would do a breakout session. I'd talk about stress, and I'm pouring into them, and I'm trying to give them all
Mhm.
these strategies. And I'm trying, honestly, on one level, I'm like trying to prove myself, like I know what I'm talking about, y'all. And then after it was over, we do this breakout session or this round table. And so what would happen is like it was like speed dating, right? So every 15 minutes or so, 3 or 4 people come and sit down, and then they start talking to me about the breakout session or
Mhm.
about stress or whatever it was. And what I realized is that these people don't need the stress reduction strategies as much as they just need somebody to connect and listen to them. And
Mhm.
I've thought about this, and I'll tie it back into kind of your son and my son and stuff like that. Very early on, of course, like I've got the gym, and I love working out, and I'm buying him barbells for Christmas, and I'm like, yeah, he's gonna be lifting weights at 5 years old and all this different kind of stuff. But he likes to color and draw, and he has a natural talent to it. Now, me, I could start shoving that square peg into a round hole and say, no, come on, we're going out here and we're going to work out. And I'm completely ignoring the fact that he's got a natural gift and ability in this area. And instead, learning to say, okay, well, let me put my thing aside and let me just appreciate where he is right here with this thing. And so for some parents, that's really hard because, maybe there's some things that they're doing that they don't agree with. And maybe they aren't necessarily the right thing to do. But once again, it comes down to those conversations, speaking in truth and love.
Yeah.
Thing is especially kids, man, even all the way up until 18, man, they're soaking things up, man. They're sponges and they're listening. And even if it doesn't hit right in the moment when we want it to, I think down the road, they're going to look back and say, you know what, Dad? Hey, Mom, I'm really glad you said that. I know I didn't listen to you for 5 years. I know I didn't listen to you for 10 years, but looking back, you were so right. I'm so sorry I had to learn that lesson the hard way. And I'm speaking from experience, not because my son's done that to me, but because I've had to do that with my parents. Like,
Right.
y'all were right. I didn't want to admit it, but y'all were right. And so I think that's something for parents to be reminded of is like, our first job is to love our children. Our second job, we have to lead and guide them the absolute best that we can. But, whenever that fails, like that doesn't discredit our love for them. And I'm speaking to educators as well, right? I mean, this is the same thing from a teacher's perspective or an administrator, a coach's perspective as well, is that we approach it the exact same way. Love first, communicate, we do the best we can to reach them. And when it doesn't work, or when we feel like it doesn't work, we allow it to kind of like that seed that we've planted in them to kind of germinate and take root and start to grow on its own. So,
I love that. I love that. I want to switch to something else that you talk about on your site is that you provide you want a holistic approach to this.
yes.
And it's a lot of it you've alluded to, the physical aspect, the exercise aspect. I do not believe that many parents or adults realize the tremendous importance it is to not only train them mentally, to train them emotionally, to worry about their emotional, IQ,
Yes.
all those types of things that we're talking about, but there has to be a part of it where we're training them body wise to do this
Yes.
as well. So could you speak to that some and kind of allude to discuss to help parents realize that? I
Yeah.
just don't see either. You've got some that are like my house where my wife's a fitness coach and it's just part of what we do, and then others where they're not doing anything, and as a result that aspect of a child's life hinders the other aspects of it. So I mean, again, I don't think we're asking everybody to be fitness specialist,
Right. Or
but
bodybuilders or CrossFit,
yeah.
performance, athletes. Yeah, it's funny. Do you like the Joe Rogan show, or
Yeah,
everybody
yeah, yeah.
listening to this has at least heard of Joe Rogan? And I'll be honest with you, I haven't listened to him a whole lot as of late. But one thing I remember him saying, it connected me with him so much, was he talked about the benefit of exercise. And what he said was exercise slays demons. And I cracked up the first time I heard that. I was like, what is he talking about? Exercise slays demons. And what he said, and at the time when I heard this, I was living in Austin, Texas. And I was commuting 30 minutes to go to school in San Marcos, which is about 30 minutes south of Austin. And then I would have to drive 30 minutes back after class. And then I worked in West Austin, which was another 20-minute drive. So I'm constantly in the car. I'm constantly battling traffic. And he made this analogy. He said, man, if I go 2, 3, 4 days a week without working out and I get stuck in traffic, he said, man, the demons start to come out. He said, man, I start getting mad. I get road rage. I'm getting angry. I'm wanting to, throw my fist out the window. And he said, but man, when I work out and I like burn that steam off, I get the adrenaline pumping and I get that dopamine rush afterwards. He said, man, I can be stuck in traffic and man, I'm just enjoying myself. And I was like, man, that has got to be, apart from all of the health benefits, apart from, improving your physique, that's got to be the greatest benefit, is the fact that you get better like emotional regulation with things like exercise. Like when you blow off that steam in the gym, man, you feel so much better afterwards. And these little things that would typically irritate you in life, they don't do such a good job anymore. I have one client who comes and works with me. She's a pediatric doctor. And there will be times when she will message me on the way to her session and say, we need to do ball slams today. Like it's been a ball slam day. Like she needs to come in and let out some aggression. Yes. Yes. I'm like, oh, should I throw in some burpees too? She's like, no burpees, just ball slams.
I'm sadistic. I actually like a burpee.
Oh, you sick man.
The two things I liked was the burpees and wall balls. I get into, unless there's something that's combined with them that wears me out, and then they're tedious. If I just can do them, kind of separately or something, I'm like, oh, this is fine. I'm in good mood there.
Yeah, we need to do some wall ball burpee combos. Let's see how efficient you are with those. With the ball in the air, drop down real quick. There's probably some people listening like, I have no clue what you guys are talking about at all.
I've heard people doing double squats on a wall ball. They toss it and they squat twice. And I'm like, I'm too slow to do that. I'm trying to work to get below crease on the knee, to make sure it's a true squat. And they're doing it twice. I mean, they got to be doing a little jump or something. I don't know what they're doing. So.
Well, and I feel the same way about double unders. Like, I mean, I cannot get
I can't do a
the
double
rhythm
under
down.
anymore.
And once again, people are like, wow, now I really do feel like I'm listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. So we'll bring it back in. But yes, I really do believe that exercise, it does so much for us. So in one of the talks that I give, and I share this with students, is I talk about something that I called the E3 workout plan. And this is something that I developed very early on, like whenever I first started working out. And the 3 E's in the E3 workout plan is you exercise your body. Now, the thing with exercise, and my tune has kind of changed on this. I used to be very hard, like, hey, you got to strength train, you got to do CrossFit, you need to have weights in your hand. But now the approach that I have, I've recently become a wellness coach, is like, man, just find some movement. If it's going for a hike, if it's a skateboarding, if it's, body weight calisthenics, find something that you
I've taken up rucking lately, which I found I feel it a lot more sometimes than I do a CrossFit workout. It's like, what just happened? I was just walking around with a weight on my back. So,
well, and not to dip off into entrepreneurial conversation, but a ruck is like business time for me. I go for a walk and man, it frees up my mind to kind of think about what I need to do today, or what phone calls I need to make, what emails I need to send. It's really good thinking time. So anyways, yes, the first E is exercise. You're going to exercise. I don't care what it is, but you got to pick something and you're going to do it. The next one is empower. While you're exercising, you're going to empower yourself with life-giving words. Hey, I'm strong, I'm healthy, I'm confident, I'm wealthy, I'm abundant, I'm prosperous. Whatever you want to say, like I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm handsome, whatever it is. And I can remember whenever I developed this, like I was going through a time where I needed all the positive affirmations. I was just like, I felt like a lowlife, And so some students, or some kids, some teens, they may have just like one area, maybe it's like they don't feel like they fit in, or they feel like they're weird or they're different. And so, they might come up with affirmations like, I'm appreciated, or I'm welcomed, or I'm confident, or whatever it is, just finding these words to empower yourself. And, some people, they kind of bash affirmations, but I mean, there's scientific literature that talks about when you speak these words that your body then emulates, that your mind doesn't know a difference between you speaking these words and your body actually living these words. So you actually your body posture starts to change. And so that's the second thing. You have exercise, you have empower. And then when you get done, the last E is you embrace. You embrace where you are in the process. It's like we're not, 100%. We're not perfect, but we're on the journey and we're embracing where we are in the process as we go through that, because it's really easy, especially for teens. I mean, I say especially for teens. I think everybody struggles with this, especially in today's social media era where we are constantly on the comparison bus. It's like, well, they're doing better than me here. They've got this going for themselves. And here I am, this is my second workout ever. It's like, it's like, no, embrace where you are today. Like, hey, I did it. I said I was going to do it. I completed it. That's a huge win. I'm doing awesome, and it's like building on that every single day. That starts to do something for you. And so I share that with students because the power behind exercise is it builds your confidence. It builds your self-esteem. It helps you believe in yourself more than, I would even say, more than like passing an exam. These things all help.
And
But
biochemically, it's releasing all these hormones inside of you that we don't want to go into the technical, dopamine, dopamine, all that kind of stuff on the show. But, chemically, things are happening positive for you as well.
Yes. And it's the easiest way to access those things that are legal, that are legal and healthy and good for you.
And ethical.
Seriously.
It might be ethical, because in some states, some of that stuff may be legal. We don't know anymore. So.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So, but yes, I will say, it just does so much for students. And I even tease students as far as, man, I would go get a workout in and then I'd go take an exam and I would always find myself doing better in the exam after I had some exercise. It's like my brain's on fire. It's just like I'm sharp, I'm tuned in, I'm locked in. And I think we talked about this last time we hung out as far as like exercising to the point where you leave energized, not drained, And so, I think that's important too. But once again, we don't have to get in the weeds with all of that. But, just like getting some movement in, it doesn't have to be, this crazy, insane workout, but just doing something where you're getting some blood flow. The endorphins are flowing. You're feeling more confident when you look in the mirror. These things do some incredible things, not just for adults or for parents, but even for our students and our kids.
Chase, how can our audience connect with you to learn more about what you do, to kind of buy into this E3? Because I really love this. I wrote that down. I may be stealing that at some point in time. You'll hear me say it's mine. Because
well, man, I've got so much more for you. So if we do this again, I can share some more of my stuff with you. But the best two ways that you can get in touch with me is, number one, social media. I'm on all major platforms. The ones that I spend the most time on currently are, of course, Instagram and TikTok. I'm spending a lot of time on TikTok. I'm not really producing a lot of content on there. It's just a time drainer. I'm sure some people can relate to that. But anyways, that's at Chase Inspires. That's my handle on all platforms. And then, of course, my website, which you've got right here, chaseinspires.com. And yeah, would love to connect with anybody. My email is even chase@chaseinspires.com. If there's parents, if there's administrators who are looking for, answers, or just like, once again, somebody to talk to, somebody to listen, I would love to be that resource for you and help you. Once again, there's a scripture that I'm reminded of. It says, those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. And so whenever I look at, what I'm doing and stuff like that, doing this and then having other people come to me and ask like for help or guidance or assistance or whatever it is, that goes right back into my family life, man. It fires me up. It makes me feel good whenever I do those things that, it's like I'm getting to do this stuff and I'm helping here. And it's like, if I'm talking the talk, I'll 100% want to walk the walk. So then I come in here with my family and I'm more present with them and I'm pouring the same qualities that I'm pouring into the students, into my son. And so it's just one of those positive feedback loop type things.
I love our conversation today. It's been encouraging for me on many different levels, a lot of synergy in your journey and the journeys that I see in my own immediate family. But also just the outlook on how do we affect youth. I do believe, too, that these two generations that we're dealing with now, those who are, let's see, upper 20s now to around 15, Gen Zers, they have that potential. Well, I guess you could say they're down to 13 if you wanted to. And then the next generation that's behind them, they do have that potential to really change the world if we can convince them and guide them in the right way and give them opportunities to do so. So I hope that we can do that. I hope that they're optimistic that we can do that and go forward. So, and our audience, if you're listening and you want to connect with Chase, you just look at the show notes. All those links are going to be in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill. You got to just look straight down. There's a show more button or something like that, and you just click on that and you'll see it. If you're listening, go to your app. You'll see those things there. So Chase, thank you for your time today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, James, thank you so much for having me. I hope to be back.
Well, thank you. And thank you, audience, for sticking with us. Listen, if you've been with us almost 40 minutes, you obviously found some value in what you have heard today and engaged in this conversation. So Jason and I have a request. Do 3 things for us. Number 1 is like this podcast. Number 2, comment on it. Comment on it in your various apps, or if you see it on social media or something, comment there. But this is the one that we really want. We want you to share it with someone, because there's someone who doesn't know about this episode, who needs to hear this, who needs the encouragement, who needs this kind of information to maybe create a spark that can get them on the journey that they need to go. So please share it with those who need it. And we'll be back again very soon on another episode of the Generation Youth Podcast.